Grace to you and peace. My name is Steve Shusett, and I'm the resource staff and stated clerk for the Presbytery of the Highlands and the staff person to the Committee on Preparation for Ministry. And I'm glad to join with you now for the first of three parts of training for the Committee on Preparation for Ministry. If you'll hang on just a moment, I will adjust my screen. If you are following along with me in the CPM manual, you will see that from the very beginning, policies in this document are drawn from both the Advisory Handbook on Preparation for Ministry from the General Assembly and the Book of Order. This manual only summarizes portions of the Advisory Handbook and the Book of Order. And so it's advised that those who are preparing for ordination and those who are walking alongside them, whether on CPM or as a session liaison, should be familiar with the requirements in this manual. These are the items that are the usual procedures required of inquirers and candidates, but we understand that everyone is unique and everyone has different strengths and different needs. We do want to be understanding. We do want to err on the side of grace, but it's to everyone's advantage that you not assume that they will be altered just because an inquirer or candidate asks for it. We need to have discussion, as you'll see. We need to talk about this to discern what is best for everyone involved. And that's a case by case basis. Some advice for everyone involved: know the requirements of the Book of Order, the Advisory Handbook, and this manual, and plan ahead. Students, inquirers, candidates should always be looking at the next thing that's coming. Their liaisons on the session and on CPM should be looking ahead to see what they have to do next. It's as important as what they're doing now. That isn't to say don't live in the present moment, but it is to say keep at least an eye open for what's coming ahead. The requirements of the Book of Order, the Advisory Handbook, and the CPM manual all are preparations for ministry. They speak to the theology of call to ministry in the PCUSA that has to be perceived by the individual, confirmed through the church, by the church, through the presbytery. The process of discernment of this call is a partnership. It's not enough for an individual to feel I've been called to ministry, but their congregation and session that know them well, the presbytery that comes to know them better, all have to confirm this. For inquirers and candidates who enter into the process, there is a sense of solemn obligation to God and to the church. And in some cases, this means that the individual's responsibility is to recognize and accept the fact that their call to ministry may be something other than as a minister of word and sacrament. A person coming under care of this presbytery in the Committee on Preparation for Ministry process is not only discerning pastoral ministry or specialized ministry, but also whether or not they've been called to serve the church in a way that does not require becoming a teaching elder. This may mean that they are called to In some cases, commission ruling elders who act as pastors in many ways. And we have a separate policy for that, but not going through seminary, the ordination process, and being ordained as a teaching elder. Some may find that their calling is to teaching, and that teaching may happen in the congregation. That teaching could happen at a seminary. Um, this person could feel that as a ruling elder, they can contribute a lot to the church because, frankly, the church needs good ruling elders. And there are a lot of things one can do as a ruling elder to serve the congregation and the wider church. We need to have as many ruling elders involved in the presbytery as we do teaching elders. So there are all sorts of ways in which this becomes important. It's the presbytery's obligation to develop means of testing and validating the calls of those seeking to become ministers of word and sacrament, and providing guidance and oversight, and then bringing to those who are so called into active candidacy. Preparation for ordination is not a certification program where completing all of the requirements by completing all of the requirements, you're guaranteed to reach the goal at the end. Inquiry is an opportunity to explore a person's call to ministry so that that person and the presbytery can make an informed decision. Just because you pass all of your classes with flying colors in seminary does not mean you are called to be a minister of word and sacrament. It is not simply about how much you know, but who you are and who you become by the grace of God. Presbyterians believe in the ministry of all the baptized, that all church members, regardless of their occupational choice, are engaged in ministry. Again, teaching Sunday school is as much ministry as presiding at the Lord's table. It's just different. Some among them may be called by the Spirit through the church to serve as ministers of word and sacrament, but that is only one occupation through which men and women express their God-given interest and ability in life and daily work. A person experiences God's call to ministry privately as an inner urgency. I am sure I am not alone among ministers of word and sacrament and those who considered becoming a minister of word and sacrament, being told by a mentor, by a pastor, if there is something other than being a pastor that you can do that instead. There are many valuable, important ways to serve the church, and many of those are much easier, honestly, than becoming a pastor. If you feel that inner urgency that this is what you need to do, what you are called to do, that is a wonderful indicator. But in itself, that inner urgency is not enough. The church experiences the call publicly as it affirms the individual's gifts for ministry and confirms God's call through the acts of ordination and installation. As you can see by this slide, the preparation for ministry process involves two phases: inquiry and candidacy, for the inquirer and the candidate. And these are designed to explore the call, evaluate the gifts, and support the preparation of men and women who are exploring their sense of call, or people who have been encouraged by the faith community to consider the possibility that God is calling them to that particular ministry. Both of these phases of the process have their particular purposes as defined in the Book of Order, G 2.0603 and 2.0604, and they accomplish these purposes by the promotion and assessment of the individual's development in 5 key areas. First, education for ministry. The evaluation of academic potential and progress reflection on their educational experience. But please keep in mind that seminaries and presbyteries exist in different silos. We require transcripts at the presbytery to see your grades, but we get no word on your health or on the inquirer candidate's health of spirit or mind. It's only with the last General Assembly that sessions were told that they had to tell a presbytery of boundary violations that the session was aware of with a candidate or inquirer that the presbytery might not know about. The seminaries don't have to tell us anything. The students have to provide their grades. The seminaries don't. If there's a boundary violation, if there's any kind of concern with the student, that's something that the session might know about. But if they don't tell the presbytery will. The second area is spiritual development, how the individual reflects on their faith journey and their spiritual practices to discern the will of God in their lives. And there are interpersonal relationships, providing opportunities on reflecting how you relate to other people, your leadership style, what they mean in terms of function and responsibility to the ministry of word and sacrament. This is a very hard but important area of assessment. Person, again, can be very smart, they can be biblically literate, they can be experienced in all kinds of relevant ways, but if they can't work with other people, questions have to be raised. As a member of the Committee on Preparation for Ministry, how do they work with you? Do they accept your guidance, direction, or requirements? When they question, is it in a polite, professional way? These are things to pay attention to, things to bring to the inquirer candidate's attention to help them work on developing in their fullest way. Next, personal growth, through which persons reflect on who they are, what areas they need to develop, how to understand their call, and how to develop personal stewardship. And then number 5, professional development, to help people develop skills that will enhance their effectiveness as ministers of the word and sacrament and as presbyters, especially in understanding their ministry context and the ability to deal with conflict that often comes up in ministry settings wherever one serves. Conflict in itself is not a bad thing. It's two ideas appearing at the same time in the same place. But if one isn't careful, conflict can become a problem. During both the inquiry phase and the candidacy phase, the individual's progress is measured through the formulation of what we call covenant agreements. These are actually found in G20601 that set out specific expected outcomes formulated in the light of these 5 growth areas. These have to be understood as essential goals rather than minimum requirements. An annual consultation is held every year looking at these 5 growth areas. I send a form out in advance, about a month in advance, and it's sent out to both the seminarian or the person under care and to their liaison. The liaison also gets an additional form to fill out to report what happened at that annual consultation. The liaison and the person under care should meet soon after receiving these documents, a month in advance of the consultation, to think about how to fill out the form. What are good, honest answers? What are places of growth? It's an opportunity for the liaison to get to know the candidate or inquirer better. And it's an opportunity for the inquirer and candidate to think more seriously about elements of their growth and development that honestly, if we're not asked to think about them, We usually don't. So the liaison and the person under care would meet, then they would be together at the annual consultation when the person under care responds to questions from the committee and looks at the answers that have been provided. The liaison is filling out the additional form so that at the end, it can be finalized and both the liaison and the person under care can sign it. One caution that I will probably bring up later is it's easy to want to help. We're in the church, we want to help people, perfectly understandable. But we have to be careful. We have to watch our boundaries as well as we watch other boundaries. So, what do I mean by this? The form is sent out a month in advance. The person under care has it, the liaison has it. Maybe a week goes by and the liaison hasn't heard anything. The temptation is to reach out and say, hey, I got this form. When do you want to get together to talk about it? This is the seminarian's responsibility, the person under care. This is their responsibility to initiate action. Part of our assessment is whether or not they can follow the process and take the role of initiating action in a timely manner. Sunday comes every week. Things have to be organized in advance. They have to be prepared. And it will be this person in the role of minister of word and sacrament, as teaching elder, as the pastor of a church, to make sure you're not thinking about Easter on Palm Sunday. And so sending this form a month in advance and seeing if indeed they do initiate the process is a way for us to understand as CPM, is this something we need to stress with this person? Is this something they need to work on? So you see the annual consultation and the covenant agreement are very vital and required. And so those things happen, and the liaison and the person under care are not surprised when it comes, or at least no more surprised than a month or so in advance. All along, inquirers and candidates have to obtain the committee's approval before they accept any position that involves any kind of ministry in the church, whether they are paid or volunteer. If they want to get into guest preaching, they should talk to CPM just to get their input. If they're going to take on a position, volunteer or paid to teach Sunday school, whatever the case may be, they really ought to be in touch with CPM, and they really ought to be getting approval. CPM may say, that sounds lovely, but with your course load, is that a good idea? That's a great idea, but can you do this every week and do the other things you're required to do? They may have questions, they may have observations. I should say we, as CPM, may have those questions and observations. The Committee on Preparation for Ministry has been given authority by the Presbytery of the Highlands of New Jersey to act as a delegated commission. That means there are certain areas in the life of the church, in the life of our relationship with those under care, that CPM can act without having to go to the presbytery. These are to receive inquirers. Someone says they would like to enter into the inquiry process. They will likely, or will indeed, go before the presbytery early on, but it won't be to be voted on by the presbytery. It will be to be recognized by the presbytery, introduced to the presbytery, to be lifted up for the presbytery's prayers. But it's CPM that says, okay, they've done all the things they have to do. They've met with us and we feel comfortable starting this process. And therefore, we will um, receive them as an inquirer. It is up to CPM to certify a candidate ready to receive a call. That's the last stage before they can begin submitting their personal discernment profile. And so they're getting permission from us, which is the next item. But just being certified, ready to receive a call, that's up to CPM. It's a huge step, but CPM does that. In part, the thinking is we have walked with them as far as we can. We have helped them get to this point. Now it will be up to a presbytery to decide whether or not they really are ready to be called to that presbytery to that call. And so that test is left for whatever presbytery will be receiving that person into some sort of ministry. Again, permission to circulate their personal discernment profile comes from CPM. The annual consultations happen. CPM does that on behalf of the presbytery. And when it becomes necessary, it is up to CPM to remove an individual from the inquirer or candidate status they had achieved. And this is done for their confidentiality and for their privacy. CPM will have been informed as to why they made this decision, and that is enough. The presbytery trusts CPM to accept that and to act accordingly. Sometimes someone will be removed from our list of inquirers or candidates for a temporary time. They are discerning something and they don't want to continue the process at this point, but that doesn't mean they won't come back. And other people, they have discerned their life's path is in a totally different direction and that they will not be pursuing ordination to the ministry of word and sacrament, and they are removed. And other people, unfortunately, things happen in life where knowing what CPM does, it's best for everyone involved that they no longer be involved in the process. And that could be for any number of things. It could be health, mental health, actions that we are concerned about, or more than just concerned about. And that would be then CPM's decision. And all CPM has to do is inform the presbytery, generally in a written report or a line in the presbytery monthly or presbytery's regular report, that X, Y, or Z has been removed from the list of inquirers. And that's period. That's all that has to be said. There are two liaisons who walk alongside the inquirer or the candidate. The first is the session liaison, who is someone from the individual's home church, an elder. Doesn't matter whether they're currently on session or not, but they will walk alongside. And the session liaison should make contact at least once a quarter, and more often if the situation requires it, or just because they develop a relationship where that seems reasonable. The session liaison, and you'll see the session liaison's responsibilities are not on this slide, but there are a variety of things: getting to know the inquirer candidate better, staying in touch regularly in a variety of ways, in person, email, phone, Zoom, taking interest in how the student is doing, or the person under care, I should say. And then when they're in seminary, their academics, their field education, preparing for their annual consultations, challenges or problems they're having. Finding ways to help the congregation remain aware of the fact that they have someone in the inquiry or candidacy process in their congregation? How do we pray for them? How do we help them? How do we support them? It would be up to the liaison to um, talk to the session about how they can provide financial assistance or other tangible support. It might be that the session with its resources could help the student with certain things that aren't required of the church to help with, and we'll get to that later. At the presbytery meeting, where someone is introduced as an inquirer or brought forward as a candidate, particularly when they're examined for ordination, the session should make sure that someone, and especially the liaison, accompany that person and their family when the presbytery is examining them and making their decision. And that can be on Zoom, that can be on in person, where that liaison is there just to be supportive. Obviously, the session liaison would pray for the person under care. This is why this information is being shared with you. It's in the manual, it's not on the slide, because it's not CPM's role to do all of this, it's the session liaison's role. But the CPM liaison is the one who needs to be in touch occasionally with the session liaison to say, are you doing these things? Are you caring for the person? Have you looked at this page in the manual to see what's going on? Just so the CPM liaison has the additional role of just, even if it's only at the beginning, because again, people need to be responsible adults, but to check in and make sure that the church is preparing the care for the person under care, and that care is initiated through the liaison. However, the committee liaison from CPM has their own responsibilities. So make sure the session liaison knows their job. Be in regular contact yourself with the inquirer candidate. Again, whether you do it monthly, quarterly, be sure it's regular. We have the candidate's birth year and date, or birth month and date. You can send them a happy birthday greeting. If you know they've got exams coming up, you can reach out to them and just let them know you're praying for them. It's the CPM liaison's responsibility to update CPM on what you learn from that regular conduct or contact with the person under care. So we understand, oh, they're planning to take their Hebrew exam next week. Let's pray for them. To remind us, because we approved it months ago, that this is the time when the person is taking their ordination exams. Be a liaison between the person and the committee. As the liaison, when that person, inquirer, or a candidate is attending CPM or presbytery meetings, you really need to be there to talk to us about what you've learned, what knowledge you've gained, and then we are in a better place to gauge how this person is doing. And invariably, concerns and questions come up. You, as the liaison, are the person to prep, in particular, the co-moderators, but also me as the staff person and the entire committee, that this question, this concern has come up. Maybe you gave some guidance, maybe you gave an answer, maybe you're looking for those things to pass back. And at the very least, you want to make us aware that this has come up and how can we best approach it. With that, we come to the end of the first part of our training on the CPM manual, and I look forward to having you hear and see me at part 2. The peace of Christ be with you.